What about Europe, Jeremy? What about Europe? Where were you when we needed you?
I think it may be, people may look back on this week as the week when the Labour Party committed suicide.
Oh, he's a good and decent man, but he is not a leader, and that is the problem.
The Labour Party being ripped apart.
Be honest with yourself, can I do this job? He cannot do the job.
The day after Jeremy Corbyn sacked his shadow Foreign Secretary Hilary Benn, he received over 30 shadow cabinet and ministerial resignations ahead of this EU referendum debate.
Our country is divided, and the country will thank neither the benches in front of me nor those behind for indulging in internal factioning manoeuvring at this time.
Keep Corbyn! Keep Corbyn!
In response, his supporters amassed outside Parliament.
Don't let those people who wish us ill divide us.
But inside Parliament, at a meeting with his party behind closed doors, on the eve of a no-confidence vote in his leadership, which he lost, his battle with his own colleagues worsened.
It was overwhelmingly dignified for most of the meeting, where people were pleading with Jeremy, saying, look, I like you, you've always been my friend, I've appreciated what you've tried to do, but this is tearing the Labour Party apart.
With 50 vacant positions to fill, Jeremy Corbyn reshuffled his pack in front of the media. He was visibly uncomfortable with the arrangement.
Can we do something later on, okay?
Yeah.
And between takes, a critic of his leadership, his deputy Tom Watson, had left the room.
I think that Seamus Milne, Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell and Diane Abbott, they have the mentality of people in a bunker. The whole of the rest of the world is against them. They are interested in the plight of people on Pacific Islands. They're interested in the Falklands. They're interested in a whole range of things like that. But they are not interested and have very little understanding of the processes of Westminster politics.
If he wants to deal with
On Wednesday, in the first PMQ since Brexit, the Prime Minister surprised many with this intervention.
For heaven's sake, man, go!
Well, the heavens have certainly opened on Jeremy Corbyn's parade. Following the Prime Minister there, Ed Miliband, once tipped to join his cabinet after the referendum, has now also called for him to go. I did find one fan of Jeremy Corbyn's, but not, sadly, of the BBC.
Anything to do with it. Go.
OK. Well, it's obviously a highly emotional subject, this, for Dennis Skinner too. On Thursday morning, it looked like a challenger to Jeremy Corbyn would emerge.
Are you going to stand for the leadership?
I'll be saying something later today.
Well, it's 2:35 here in Westminster this Thursday afternoon, and rumours are swirling around. We understand that 4 of Jeremy Corbyn's closest allies, 4 MPs he just recently put into his new shadow cabinet, have gone into his office and are trying to persuade him to resign. As it happened, they weren't invited in. Our source said the shadow cabinet ministers were left exasperated and frustrated, unable to deliver their suggested retirement plan for Mr. Corbyn to the man himself. And as the minutes ticked by, no challenge to Jeremy Corbyn's leadership emerged. It's Friday morning, we're at the Royal Festival Hall, and we're just about to hear a speech from Jeremy Corbyn's biggest ally, the Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell. He claims the shadow cabinet resignations have allowed a new generation of politicians to come forward.
This has given opportunities to people like Barry, who actually I think should have been in shadow cabinet years ago, but hasn't had the opportunity. And they're rising to the challenge really effectively. And I'm so proud of them. These are the heroes and heroines of our movement at the moment.
You talked about the movement rather than the party.
Oh yes, yeah.
Is that usurping traditional party structures?
No. The movement is the Labour Party, and we're building it on a mass basis now into a social movement. So it isn't just an electoral machine, it's something that engages in the wider community.
If the Labour Party is going to reconnect with people, it needs to do more than have sound bites and a polished media performance along the Blair sort of model. It actually needs to be building a social movement, and I think that Jeremy and John have really, they've started to do that. They've stood on picket lines alongside striking workers, they've joined mass marches.
With the threat of a leadership contest on the horizon, over the past week, Labour membership has risen by 60,000. But a new YouGov poll suggests Labour Party members think Jeremy Corbyn is not doing as well in his job as he was just 2 months ago. Aside from the focus on his own future, Jeremy Corbyn still has half a dozen key shadow frontbench posts to fill, so that Labour can offer effective opposition in Parliament.
I'm joined now by the Labour MP Barry Gardiner. He stayed loyal to Jeremy Corbyn and is now in the Shadow Cabinet. Welcome to the programme. How can Jeremy Corbyn be regarded as a credible leader of the opposition when he can't fill his Shadow Cabinet team and 80% of his fellow Labour MPs have no confidence in him?
Look, we have a very difficult situation in the Labour Party at the moment. We have a division between the Parliamentary Labour Party. The Parliamentary Labour Party has never actually supported Jeremy. Last year, I think it was only 36 nominations that he secured. I didn't nominate Jeremy, I didn't vote for him. But nonetheless, the way in which our party decides upon a leader is not just with the Parliamentary Labour Party, it is with the membership, the wider membership as well. And so what we have to do now is we now need to have a situation where we broker that divide. And we've seen, I think earlier today, we've seen that Jeremy himself wants to do that. He came out in the press this morning saying that. And also, I think the unions have been saying that as well. I think a figure like Francis O'Grady or perhaps John Prescott, somebody who stayed neutral, who stayed out of the fight, but ultimately has the best interest, not of Jeremy, not of the party, but of the country, which needs to have a strong opposition at the moment, at a time when you've seen the newspapers this morning, the Conservatives have their own problems, you've dealt with that, calling each other hypocrite, Boris stabbed David, Michael Gove stabbed Boris, but there are fundamental issues about housing. There are fundamental issues about investment in this country that we now need to be on the front foot.
But before you can even get to that or deserve a hearing on that, you have to sort things out, as you've been saying. We've got John Prescott on later in the programme. We'll see if he's willing to be the honest broker in this. But in your mind, what would be the general principle of a brokered agreement? What would be the compromise from Mr. Corbyn?
Well, look, I'm not sitting here in that position as the negotiator, but what I would say is there are certain things that need to be respected. The democracy of the party needs to be respected, and that's what I had against the way in which this whole, call it what you like, coup plot was done. It was done in a way that actually did not respect party members, did not respect party democracy. And whatever we end up as the result of a negotiation, it must show that respect for the party membership. The second, obviously, is the legacy that Jeremy feels is his responsibility. He was elected with on a particular mandate, with a political mandate, not just about party democratisation, but a suite of policies that he would want to be sure were continued.
Well,
somehow we need to make sure that the compromise, whatever it is, brings both of those together.
Well, I'm interested in what you say there, because you're already talking about Mr. Corbyn's legacy, and you're talking about a suite of policies that could continue to be party policy even if he wasn't there.
Well, look, we're talking about a negotiated settlement, right?
Which could involve Mr. Corbyn going.
Well, that's not a matter for me.
No, but it could from what you say.
Well, look, if you go into a negotiation, you're going to negotiate. And what we know is that one side of that negotiation wants Jeremy to leave now without a contest. The other side of that negotiation has very clearly said there isn't going to be a resignation, right? So what one has to do is to say, well, any of these permutations may come together. The question is in what form, in what shape. The coup if I can call it that, tried to ensure that Jeremy simply threw up his hands and went. Now, that is clearly not going to happen. And therefore, what we have to do is we have to be able to provide a strong and credible and real opposition to the government at the moment, because the country is in crisis after Brexit. Absolute crisis. Not just the pound falling to a 35-year low, not just the stock markets, but the whole future negotiation of investment in this country is up for grabs.
And we
need to be saying that firmly in the House of Commons.
At a time when many people will think we most need it, we don't have a credible opposition.
And we don't have a credible government. They're squabbling like rats in sacks.
Well, that seems to be the default position of British politics at the moment, on all sides. But let me put this to you, that if you don't have a contest, Mr Corbyn can't function as a credible opposition because he can't fill the shadow cabinet and the other positions. If you do have a contest and he wins in the country, that doesn't resolve things either. So neither of these two options really help you. Look, do they?
That may be true, but there may be a third way.
What is that?
Well,
it's the brokered agreement without Mr Corbyn.
Well, there would have to be a third way. I don't know what it is. I'm not here to put that.
It's not Tony Blair, I assume.
It's something.
Since he was the third way.
Well, it's we've moved on somewhat since those days, and I'm a huge admirer of Tony Blair, and he led the Labour Party into government, and he won those elections for us and delivered a tremendous mandate. But that's not where we are now.
It was your use of the third way which just interested me, but I think you mean it in a different context. If there is to be a contest, if one of the rebels does finally come forward as a challenger and you have a vote again, would you vote for Mr Corbyn?
I didn't vote for Jeremy 9 months ago.
No.
I am not of the same political ilk as Jeremy, and he was not my choice as leader of the party. What I will do whenever a candidate, or if a candidate comes forward to challenge Jeremy, if Jeremy is part of that election, I will look at all of the candidates and I'll make my judgment at that time as to what best serves not only the interests of the Labour Party, but also what best serves the interests of the country.
How did you vote in the no confidence motion?
That was a secret ballot, and I'll keep it that way.
You're going to keep it that way. So you didn't vote for him before, you might not vote for him again, and you'll keep the no confidence ballot secret on that. Isn't there a systemic problem that's developed in the Labour Party with all the new members that came in from early last summer onwards, that they've invigorated your membership, but they may not be very representative of, they are certainly not representative of the parliamentary party, and they may not be representative of the wider Labour voter, never mind the wider electorate.
You know, the wonderful thing about political parties is if you look at most members of most political parties, they are a bit like anoraks. They're not desperately similar to ordinary people, and that's in both parties.
This is especially different.
You're asking a more subtle question, and that is, are we seeing entryism into the party? That's the real question that you're asking.
And there has been.
And there has been. And we know that. But where that has been proven, those people have been evicted from the party, and quite rightly so. I don't want people to join the Labour Party because they think either they can destabilise it in one way to the right or in one way to the left. I want people to join the Labour Party because they want to get out there, fight this rotten government, make sure that the real issues that people are facing in terms of their jobs and their livelihoods are tackled, and get out with me on the doorstep each weekend, knocking on doors, talking to people about that. Not just coming in to exercise their vote once in a while when there's a leadership election.
Final question, which can be answered yes, no, or don't know. When we talk again at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool at the end of September, will Mr Corbyn still be your leader?
The answer is I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't got a crystal ball to see the result of whatever negotiations Jeremy now engages in.
All right. Barry Gardiner, thank you for being with us this morning. These are interesting times. Earlier, Len McCluskey, he's the General Secretary of the Unite Union, Labour's biggest donor, told Andrew Marr that Mr Corbyn wasn't going anywhere and that rebellious MPs seem to have been seduced by sinister forces.
grandees being dragged out to be part of this unedifying coup is quite outrageous. I mean, the reality is that this has been a political lynching of a decent man, undermined, humiliated, attacked, in order to push him out. And here's the truth. It's failed. The coup has failed. Jeremy Corbyn is made of stronger stuff. He's a man of steel, and he's made it clear that he will not step down.
And Chris Bryant, who resigned from the Shadow Cabinet last week, joins me now. Welcome back to the programme. Will there be a challenger to Mr Corbyn now for the leadership?
Well, I think there's a previous question. I'm sorry to tell you that there's a previous question, but it seems to me that actually there are millions of people out there in the country who would really like to be able to vote for the Labour Party. But whilst we have this unsustainable position, they feel it's impossible. And the unsustainability of it is frankly that we are a parliamentary democracy. So the first job of the leader of the Labour Party is to lead the parliamentary Labour Party and to provide an opposition. That requires 95 MPs on the front bench. Jeremy can't get more than 20 or 25. And I think that simply means that the present situation is unsustainable. The only person who can break that logjam is Jeremy himself.
But the logjam in some way would be broken, or at least tested, if someone challenged him. So let me come to what is now the second question of your interview. Will somebody challenge him? Should someone challenge him?
Well, I don't want anybody to challenge him yet. I want Jeremy to read the writing on the wall, because what's happened over the last year, we've now had an opinion poll of Labour Party members, which shows that 44% of them want him to go now and another 10% want him to go before the general election. We've had votes of no confidence, not only in the parliamentary party, that's more than 80% of MPs saying, this has never happened before, 80% of MPs saying that they have no confidence in his leadership. And that means he wouldn't be able to get on the ballot paper. I mean, there's a reason why the rule book says you've got to get a certain number of nominations from the parliamentary party, because if you haven't even got that much support, how can you really lead the Labour Party?
Even if you're the incumbent,
even if you're the incumbent,
people just watching this programme who may nothing to do with the Labour Party, may not be that political, would just think that if you're the leader of the party and you're challenged for that leadership, natural justice says you should be allowed to defend your position.
But if you then simply return to the status quo ante because you end up with exactly the same unsustainable position, then I don't think that resolves anything for the Labour Party.
That would be your democratic decision.
Well, except that, I think because we are a parliamentary democracy, the leader of the Labour Party has to be able to unite the parliamentary party and the membership, and frankly be able to recruit voters to our cause. And I don't think Jeremy's able to do any of those three things. But what's interesting, I think, is amongst the membership, I don't think Jeremy would win a contest, if I'm honest now.
You don't?
I don't, because it was striking to me how many people have got in touch with me from my own local party saying, of course there are people who are ardent Corbynistas and they will be till their dying day, but there are others who've got in touch to say, I only joined the Labour Party to support Jeremy, but I'm sorry, this just can't go on. Jeremy's not convincing me, he's not convincing my neighbours, and they want him to go.
But of course, you may be right, but there's only one way you can put that to the test.
There's only one way.
And that is someone to challenge Mr Corbyn, and let's see how the dominoes fall.
No, because I think that just gets us immediately back to the same position.
Oh, no, if he loses.
I think it will be phenomenally bruising within the Labour Party to have that contest. I think far more effective would be for Jeremy to read the writing on the wall, which is, I mean, it must be 8 metres high now. I mean, how can you possibly go forward with the situation as leader of the Labour Party when 7 of your new members of your shadow cabinet that you've only appointed this week, who are Corbyn supporters, want to come and see you, and you're so frightened that you can't even meet with them, or with the deputy leader of the Labour Party?
And indeed, I see the logic of that. But how long will you give him to read this writing on the wall?
Well, look, in the end, it's up to Jeremy. Jeremy is, I think, a very decent man. I can't imagine any other leader of the Labour Party in our history, apart from perhaps Ramsay MacDonald, who would not have taken on board the result of a motion of no confidence.
But he seems to be surrounded by people who are telling him not to, and that he is hitting these people. I mean, we've had stories that he was thinking of standing down, but he was talked out of. We don't know the full veracity of all that. But if he doesn't, if he decides, no, I'm hanging on here, what do you do?
To be honest, once you're in the bunker, and you've got a bunker mentality, the game's up, is all I'd say. And I'm sure that in Jeremy's heart, he knows that there is a real danger that his broken leadership, because that is frankly what it is now, will break the Labour Party.
But listen, the Parliament goes into recess on the 21st of July. Just as the Tories haven't got much time to go through their leadership process, you haven't got much time. If he hangs on in there till the parliamentary recess, then he's there for the party conference.
Well, no, we've also got the September session. But look, I mean, I would just say, if Jeremy is listening, please, 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 Jeremy, you're the only person who can break this logjam. You could go out with dignity, and the whole of the Labour movement and the millions of people who'd love to vote for the Labour Party at a time when we've got a ghastly Tory government which might inflict even more harm through further austerity policies way into the next Parliament. If you were to go now, all those people would say you've done an immensely honourable thing. The Labour Party isn't going to go back to what it was 10 years ago.
Right. What do you make of Barry Gardiner just talking there about a third way, about some kind of brokered arrangement, which I took to imply needn't necessarily include Mr Corbyn continuing as leader?
It didn't sound to me as if Barry was very strongly supportive of Jeremy remaining as leader, let me put it that way. And I think part of whatever happens now must be Jeremy going. But it's a bit of a problem if Jeremy won't even see the 7 people in his shadow cabinet that he appointed this week who want to talk to him about his departing with honour, or if he won't even have a meeting with the deputy leader of the Labour Party, who incidentally also has a mandate from the members themselves. And my local members the other day, some of them of course want Jeremy to stay, whatever, but many of them were saying, look, this is now completely and utterly unsustainable. Jeremy must go, the party must treat him with decency so that we can move forward and take the fight to the Tories.
If he doesn't go, or if there is a contest and he wins again, that the party in the country put him back in, what happens to the Labour Party? What do people like you do?
Well, I mean, that would break the back of the Labour Party on, I would argue, the vanity of those surrounding Jeremy. And I think that would be a terrible, terrible shame, because there are people in my constituency who will only get a decent chance in life, and for that matter, in many of the other parts of the country, who, after the Brexit vote last week, wanted the Labour Party to come up with a strong argument about how we could change this country for the better, and they will have nowhere to turn.
If you break the back of the party, that sounds like it's at least possible that Labour would split.
Look, as I've said several times, the truth is we are a parliamentary democracy. We were founded as a Labour Party because the trade unions started losing battles through the courts. They wanted to change the country. Exactly, to change the law, and to do that you had to change the government. And that's what I still believe in. But if the leader of the Labour Party has to convince voters that we've got a compelling vision for the future of this country, and Jeremy is simply unable to do that. Many of Jeremy's policies I passionately support. I want us to change the whole language around public expenditure and the public sector, because as the Rhondda, many other parts of the country feel completely neglected, and there are angry people there who want to vote Labour but are not convinced now.
Not doing it. As things stand at the moment, even with what you could call chaos in the governing party at the moment, you would need a major miracle to win in 2020.
I believe in miracles.
Very well. On that existential point.
And the most important miracle is that Jeremy can break the logjam.
Very well. You still don't want to hit Ed Miliband, though, do you? You've changed your mind on that.
I don't want to hit Ed Miliband. I wish we weren't as a Labour Party where we are, because I can do nothing for the Rhondda.
Peace has broken out on the Sunday politics.
May your God go with you.